I wrote a book in October of 2020 about this journey that I went on after my brother died, and I needed to heal from the trauma of his death and our childhood and capitalism. I put it out and just in my circles, and the timing wasn't right for it because shit was really crazy then. We were all still dealing with COVID pretty hardcore, and nobody wanted to hear about that time so immediately. But now I feel like the timing is better. So I'm going to read this introduction to put pressure on myself because my mind needs that to get things done, to record the entire book and maybe put out an ebook version of it if people want to read it. But I think the time is right for this book because I really hope what I wrote would inspire people to do some healing on their own, to clear out some space so that they can get involved with the struggle for collective liberation. So here's the thing. This video is probably about like 5.5 minutes long. Okay. My older brother was one of the 42,000 people in the United States who died from an opioid overdose in 2016. These days, that number is around 80,000 a year, but the grief and despair bound up in every one of those deaths is not tempered by their exponential growth. There are just more and more people whose lives are adversely affected by it. Depending on the nature of our loved one's spiral into oblivion, we may have been mourning their death or fighting like hell to keep them alive for a long time before their actual death. Meanwhile, we had to keep on working, schooling, and taking care of ourselves and our families. Together, we crashed into a pandemic, adding painful layers of isolation and general hopelessness to our grief, and the competition for survival only increased. How do we even start to heal from our loss when the exhaustion of just trying to exist in late capitalism is so heavy? How can we possibly imagine taking the collective actions necessary to address the environmental crisis when our executive functioning is constantly hijacked by exhaustion, trauma, and ever-growing demand for self-optimization? Are non-competitive relationships even possible in a world where so much connection is transactional and the boundaries of our personal brands are so rigid? Can we even hope for a life beyond the confines of survival mode, beyond the imperative to keep the economy growing at all costs? My brother's death crushed me, and I got physically sick in a way that I never had before in my life. And it wasn't just that I had lost the co-historian of my abusive childhood. I was already drained from years of grinding and competing for my own little piece of economic stability in late capitalism. I was treading water furiously, knowing that there wasn't much of a safety net to catch me if I stopped. How could I heal when I couldn't even survive? I tried medications, therapy, psychedelics, and eventually decided to just get the hell out of Dodge as the pandemic was looming. This story is about how my quest to find rest and healing in Thailand made me realize that there is no healing without changing our environment, no changing our environment without healing our inner world. It is impossible to imagine a better world when our minds and hearts are punctured with fear and habituated to the status quo. So we must use whatever resources we can muster to heal, and we must support each other in doing this work. Opioid overdoses are just one of the many disruptions that working class people experience, both financially and emotionally. Job loss, death, divorce, illness, natural disasters, accidents, birth, mental health disorders, and domestic violence all add their own painfully expensive layers. These expenses are felt in both the exorbitant costs associated with addressing these issues, as well as in the lost opportunity and working hours due to stress and the burnout from it all. Financial losses compound housing instability, and housing instability is the ultimate compounder, as the real threat of homelessness looms. These costs feed into each other, making us more vulnerable to the next shock. The point is that normal life involves suffering by alienating us from each other and commodifying all the things we need to exist. But our way of living is not predetermined by nature or God. It has been created over time to serve the people who benefit most from our upholding the status quo of endless mindless work and consumption. Is this really the reality that we want for our children and all the generations that come after them? My story is an invitation to heal and change for ordinary people, chronically overworked, emotionally detached, and hanging on to old narratives that we inherited from our parents. Running away is neither feasible nor rational. There is no outside of capitalism, no progressive nation state looking to import millions of American essential workers so that they can get some much needed R&R. At the same time, we cannot continue to carry around trauma without processing it because it only leads to more suffering. We either turn it inwards against ourselves or we turn it outwards and project it onto anyone that gets close to us. Either way, we will not have the emotional capacity to build trust and take collective action to fight fascism and get out of this colonial timeline if so much of our conscious and unconscious focus remains oriented towards the past. I hope that you will read my writing and realize that there are areas of your life you do actually have agency, and that putting effort into those areas will only grow your image of what is possible and what is worth fighting for.